Having gone through depression, I think one of the things that it took me the longest to realize, and I've realized in the past few days, but it largely took 30 years or so, which I think wisdom does take a long time for a lot of things, but you can achieve wisdom in a short period of time. And essentially, I think what that thing is that I learned is that, you know, people can look down on you all they want, and there are a lot of people who will. And there are a lot of people who will look down on you. And there are people in this world who are looking for people like me who want to help others and want to do their best and want to express themselves. And they are looking for me to, and others like me, to provide them with the solutions for their problems. But the reality that I have to come to terms with, and I think I have come to terms with, and will work on coming to terms with in the future, is that your problem is not my problem. Other people's problems are not my problem. You, we as individual citizens do owe something to other citizens. If we see someone going through a hardship or a negative experience or someone's hurting them, we should help them, but not at the risk of ourselves unless that does actually risk us to the point that saving someone else would be better than saving ourselves, which there are very few instances, if any instances at all, where that is the case. I think that the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King Jr. And several of the other leaders around that time, that was a big movement where, putting your life on the line for another citizen was something that took precedent over your own life. And there are instances like that. The Holocaust was one where people should have stood up and said no, and instead they were passive, and that's why they were led into the destruction that they were, is largely because there are bad people out there who are looking to victimize good people, and there are wicked people in the world, and they are looking for you, and they largely want, going back to the World War II thing, it's like all these people provided these documents and gave all these, records and things to the Nazis, because, and we say that they had to, but, society is this collective social thought, and the reality is that you don't have to follow collective social thought in order to matter. In order to matter, you oftentimes actually shouldn't accept general populace thinking, because the general populace doesn't always have a rational hold on things. They shun people, they view people negatively, they don't accept people into the fold of what we have come to know as humanity. And I think that, and this is just my humble opinion, I think that anyone who degrades or looks down upon or puts out negative energy or sarcasm that is directed at anyone, let alone an entire group of individuals or an individual who they exclude from their clique or their group because they don't meet the standards or the criteria of what is the norm or what is acceptable. I think that is really a shame that people would do that, and that there's more shame in shunning somebody or rejecting somebody for any reason, no matter the reason, than there is shame in being shunned or being rejected, because that person still has a life worth living and they can change their life and alter their future for the better. Whereas anyone who is consistently shunning someone into the future, regardless of whether they have grown, because they don't want to deal with taboo things, they don't want to deal with things that go against their values or their morals, just because they're difficult or they're uncomfortable to bring up, that is really, that's very indicative of people who just, on the face of it, aren't good people, and they are the wicked people. They are users, they are haters, and they are people who literally they want and they need and they have a purpose, and that purpose is to turn somebody else into a victim and to make them think that they are a victim rather than a survivor of those very individuals who are shunning them. And I think that whole families have done this as a social practice throughout the entirety of the human race, and it's just something that needs to stop. Whole neighborhoods, countries do this in popular media. People get blacklisted, and people get, they can't get a job. They get told that there's no place for them here. And it's basically the same thing as racism. The only difference is that it's not racially motivated. Whereas in racism, it's like, you have a guy who comes up to a gas station and they say, well, we've run out of gas or something like that. And, and you're like, what? You're a gas station? And you go to the next gas station and they say, oh, well, we ran out of gas. And the only thing that's different about this gas station and that gas station is that they're different gas stations. But the thing that's the same is that these two gas station owners don't like you, or they're not willing to accept you because you don't fit their standards of what is acceptable or right or correct behavior, or what they want to believe or what they want to happen, because they feel that they are right because they have the popular public behind them. And that is a very negative thing to do to a person. And, if, you shun a man because, or a woman because they are, because they just, they aren't following the social convention, or they have committed a felony and they've gone to prison and they've served their time, and you call them an ex-con and they can't get a job somewhere, or they can't go to their own supermarket without their family members, their friends that they had before, looking at them in a way, judging them, thinking, oh, that's an ex-con. That's not, or that's an addict, or that's, this is a person who is guilty of whatever crime or issue. They may have paid their dues, they may have grown better, but we still can't accept them, and we won't ever accept them in the future, ever. And not until they grovel at our feet and let us know that they're the perfect ass kissers. And there are a lot of people who are looking for that type of ass kissing, and they're just people who help people should not abide by the laws and rules that people have in a populist vote that is completely silent, and accepted, that they think that, oh, you should kiss my ass, and that I'm entitled to your dedication, to your respect. And those are things that people aren't entitled to. And, it's like I always say, a lot of people think that, a lot of people think that they're entitled to a relationship, or they're entitled to money, or they're entitled to be paid for sex, or they're entitled to housing, or they're entitled to this or that. And there are reasons why somebody receives a service. And that's what it is. And a service is always a choice by the person who is serving. And if you have a problem with the server, then you should take it up with their manager, but don't ever put them down. And if they don't have a manager and it's real life, you need to buck it up and get over yourself, because treating somebody like they are trash because you can't accept them because you follow what everybody else says is right, you need to realize and grow up and realize that that is not what is right, and that sometimes going against the grain is what actually matters. I was reading a story about during the Holocaust, there was a town in, I believe it was France or Spain, and this town was a town of Puritans, I believe, and the Puritans, their ancestors had been persecuted as witches. And so when the Nazis came and they said, give us the Jews, they said, what Jews? Where? And that's really vindicative of standing up against authority and saying, you do not have the power, and your power lies completely in my complicity to follow your orders. And that's why you should never just say to somebody that you are only following orders. Because if you're following somebody else's orders, they're following someone else's orders. That could go from a minor employee all the way up to the president. Well, the customer or the patient is not going to, or the individual is not going to be able to weed through that system in a reasonable amount of time to change their circumstances or help themselves in order to get to the fucking president. And that is something that is horrible about bureaucracy, and it's something that dissuades people from democracy. Because having that in your democracy, where it's like, you have to go to the fucking president to get something changed on like a personal level, that is ungodly difficult and ridiculous. It's possible, but it is not probable and is very unlikely. And yes, people have done it, but they spend their entire lives fighting court cases, going to the Supreme Court. These people are just, they have their entire life ruined. Protesters bombard them from all sides. There are people who support them, but there are also people who don't. It takes a long time for society to accept those issues. It's like you can't just expect people to constantly fight the system. Sometimes the system has to allow for better entry for the individual. And it's the individual's right versus the system's right. And it is versus. Believe that. And, the individual has rights, and their rights should always go before the system and before the federation, before the democracy, before the dictatorship, before the government, before anything that is ruling those people. Because those people are people, and they are human beings, and they have feelings and thoughts that matter. And if the government isn't willing to accept the thoughts and feelings of individuals as something that matters, then we do not have a system of government that functions or works as it should. And I know it's difficult to say that things should be overhauled or that things should be changed, but they should. And people will say, well, where do we start? Well, there's a lot of people who are very beat down in this world, who consistently come at the system, but the system just completely dissuades them and says, no, you must be confused. And they keep you separated and isolated from other people who have the same views. And that's why the internet is one of the greatest things, is because you can find other people who have those views, and you can say things in anonymity, and you don't have to. Like, I'm not doing that, because I honestly, this is my resulting opinion from having been in the mental health system for 10 plus years now. And it is a travesty what this country has done to our mental health system. And it is a travesty in how they treat people, the facilities that they have, the way that funding works. And the doctors know it, the people who work there know it, and that's the thing, is they say it's not our fault. Well, whose orders are you following? But the other thing is it is the higher ups who need to change the system to be more user friendly. And it's just like a tablet. Why would you sell somebody a government that isn't user friendly? How are they going to navigate that menu? They aren't going to get anywhere. You're just blocking them and telling them that they have a chance, and it's very slim, and it blocks out and filters a lot of shit that should have gone through.